Can I remind members the meeting is being recorded and will be subsequently made available for the public for listening purposes. Could I ask if there are any apologies for today?
Thank you, Chairman. No non-apologies. 2 members currently not present.
Okay. The 2 members are Councillor Scobie and...
2 members are Councillor McGregor and Councillor Scobie.
Okay, let's see if they appear at some point. Okay, can we move on to item number 2, declarations of interest? Do we have any? No? Okay, item number 3, the minute of the meeting of the 27th of August 2015, copy in the papers. Can I ask members if you're happy that's a true record of the meeting? Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Okay, item number 4 is on credit union development. It obviously updates us on the, I think, very significant progress that's been made across Dumfries and Galloway, and also there's a request there to continue the funding until March 2018. Can I ask John if there's anything to add to the report before members?
Thanks, Chair. No, nothing to add to the report, but happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Can I open up to members' questions? Jane?
Well, I mean, I am extremely enthusiastic about credit unions. I think they're a very good opportunity for people to use. And I have no difficulty at all with any of the recommendations, I hasten to say that. But, do you think that we should possibly, I mean, do you think it's ambitious enough? I'm not absolutely clear what the aims are and what the business plan projections would be for the credit union. It's quite modest. Membership's increased by 106, which is, in all honesty, quite a modest number. And I feel that I suppose we've got a whole list of inputs here, and it's not so totally clear to us, Chairman, that the outcomes are, maybe as ambitious as we would like them to be. So I just throw that out for discussion at this stage, and maybe we might think about what we could ask for the public money, which we are proposing to add.
So I'll bring John in here. I mean, I think one of the key points is, of course, we're starting from an incredibly low base in a lot of areas. It's not a culture we have in Dumfries and Galloway compared to a lot of other parts of Scotland. So it's certainly a low base. But I'll bring John in if he wants to respond to that.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I was essentially going to say the same thing, that when the Council and our RSL partners, DGHP and Auburn, agreed to start this project and work with the existing credit unions, it was from a very underdeveloped position. And I think what's been demonstrated over the last 18 months or so is that a lot of the building blocks have been put in place in terms of increasing the capacity, particularly of the Solway Credit Union, developing the website, getting significant external funding in to turn them into a more professional and customer-focused organisation, developing a range of products, particularly the Rent First account product. And I think from here on in, we anticipate that activity will rise exponentially. So although it's only a 26% increase from where it was originally, with the advent of universal credit and what can be offered through the Rent First account, we see that rising significantly. There's also huge potential to further engage with organisations and institutions to become formal partners and members, where they basically encourage employees to join the credit union and arrange essentially wage deductions at source to assist that. So I think the sense from the Credit Union Project Board, which we sit on with our partners DGHP and Auburn, is that if we can stick with this, then we'll see quite significant developments over the next 12 to 24 months, and be in a position to then say the credit unions are in a position where they become much more self-sustaining. So it's a kind of medium-term funding obligation that we think will produce significant results. In terms of the business plans, obviously, that it's Solway Credit Union and Stranraer Credit Union are independent organisations and need to develop their own credit, their own business plans, and are accountable through their own arrangements with the financial authorities. But we can certainly make sure that there's regular reports brought, which we've had in the past. I mean, the Donald Thompson, the credit union development officers, made regular presentations to lots of groups, including the subcommittee. We can make sure that that's part and parcel of any funding decision that's made today, so members are kept apprised on a regular basis of the work that's happening. But in terms of demonstrable outputs, I think I'd say the building blocks are there. There's been huge progress made in terms of getting external resources in, and we're now at a stage where we really think over the next year or so, the work that's been put in so far will really come to fruition, and it's important that we think it's important that the partners stick to our commitment and make sure that we follow this through. If the plug's pulled on it at this stage, the good work that's happened so far could be undermined. And in terms of supporting the council's anti-poverty strategy, we see this as a key plank of that strategy in terms of making sure that there is proper affordable credit available to the most vulnerable in our communities. Thanks, Jane.
Jane?
Thanks. No, Chairman, absolutely no intention whatsoever of pulling the plug on this project, none whatsoever. But I wouldn't be able from this to say, if I was challenged, what I'm getting for my 106,000 quid, 103,000 quid, wherever it is, 5, thank you. That's really the problem. Here, I think we should ask for targets to come forward, and the project board, I think, should come forward and tell us what they have suggested should be coming from the credit unions in terms of numbers of people signed up. I agree, the Rent First account seems to me to be a first-class proposal, because it's going to be incredibly important with welfare reform. If something could be done on that side to capture how many people have signed up and have been offered this particular product and have signed up in order to make their lives easier to manage their finances, I would feel much happier. So I really think that this subcommittee should be a little sharper in terms of what it's asking to come for this £105,000.
Okay, thanks for that, Jane. Well, obviously, we had Donald here at our recent meeting, giving an update on specific work that he's doing, specific tasks he's doing. I'm sure we could ask appropriate time for an update from Donald. That includes, obviously, an update on where he is with the work, but also what he envisages being the sort of projections for future years. I think that would be helpful. I think, given the fact that if hopefully, which I assume we will, agree that the funding, it gives an element of certainty for the period of time, and then we can start that process. So I think if members are happy, we would ask for a presentation on that. Okay, Stephen and then Ian.
Thank you, Chair. It's just actually on the, I suppose, on the remit of this particular subcommittee. 2.3 recommendations talking about consideration and agreement of members in terms of allocating funds from the anti-poverty strategy. Now, although this is a sort of supporting plank, if you like, to that, does this committee have that power to dip into the anti-poverty strategy, or would we make a recommendation after a consideration to full council, for example?
The Policy and Resources Committee would effectively hold that the resource allocation. But what tends to happen, given the remit the committee has, very often this committee is consulted on the allocation of funding specifically around welfare reform. But the Policy and Resources Committee would ultimately allocate that. And obviously we did set aside somewhere in the region of £1 million for the anti-poverty strategy. So funding certainly there to take that forward. Ian?
When you see the delegations in the back of the frontis, it looks like we've got that delegated power, but maybe get clarification on that. Is it on the back of the frontis, it says what our delegations are? and it refers to including powers to determine policy and expenditure in all matters referring to welfare reform. So you thought it might well be that.
I thought the strategy was a lot wider than welfare reform, obviously.
Yep, that's right. That was in the point, anyways, that was just when I just thought I'd mention that when I was on, because you picked up on it, Stephen. I suppose when I read this, I was pleased to see, very much in support of it as well, as has been mooted earlier. I think, I wonder just on the back of Jane's question in regards to if we're looking at this through our performance indicators and policy and resources committee, where would we see pretty much what Jane was referring to? Would we see that through that performance information in regards to the outcomes, how if we'd be satisfied that we're meeting the right outcomes? I suppose just in the back of that, whether we do or whether we don't, or should we be specific and that performance information should be coming to this committee at this level? Is it being a subcommittee? In regards to, I was delighted to see that DGHP as actually one of our partnership organisations kind of took the lead in regards to they actually funded it because they've seen it as being that important, even though it's come back to us retrospectively in a form. I once wondered if, as far as payment, do we actually go back? I mean, I think it'd be the right thing to do and pay a retrospective level or share of that. Is that 105k? Does it actually cover that? But obviously, for all the reasons outlined within the report and what's coming forward, I think definitely we should support it. It's the right thing to do. And 26% seems an incredible level of increase. Again, so but just it's like Colin said right from the start, it's an incredibly low base. So imagine it will take 2 or 3 years. The seeds have been sown. I think kind of you referred to earlier, John. Seeds have been sown, and things are starting. You're just seeing the green shoots, so to speak. So as we move forward, hopefully we'll see all these things coming forward. A couple of years from now, we should. Again, if we do go forward, we should actually support this financially. And a couple of years from now, it will be almost self-sustainable, if not self-sustainable.
Thanks, Chair. Just in response to the 2 questions from Councillor Carruthers. First of all, the performance of the credit union project is not currently featured in the business plan as such because it's not a council service in that respect. Going forward, I think it's probably more appropriate to have specific monitoring reports through to this subcommittee so you could look much more closely at the wider work that the credit union development project has delivered on. I don't think it would be appropriate to have it contained within community's business plan as such because it's not a council service that's being delivered. We're funding with partners an independent external organisation to take that work forward, albeit it needs to be monitored because there's council funding going through, but I think the mechanism needs to be slightly different. And I think the suggestion from the Chair in terms of regular updates and monitoring with the development officer, Donald Thompson, in attendance, I think is probably the appropriate way to deal with that, to assure yourselves that the investment is actually yielding results. In terms of the use of the 105,000, the intention would be to essentially backdate the funding from April 15, and the funding proposed will take us up to March 2018. So it's essentially a 3-year package, but running from April 15 up to March 18.
So it covers the fiscal years, which I think that's only about right, kind of, considering they took the lead in that and it gets right they did. I'm absolutely glad they did, or we would have lost that level of service. So just going back to the first point, though, in regards to that, I'm happy enough and content enough, so long as someone can build into the recommendations, Colin, as we move forward, that we do see that kind of reporting coming back. Like you say, if every service in the council was increasing at a 25% or 26% rate, we'd be absolutely jumping, wouldn't we? So obviously that's got to level off. We do see how that's implemented, and we can monitor. Again, we will be able to see as it develops, just when we think it will be sustainable as well. Thanks for that.
Okay. Any other points before we go to the recommendations? Okay. Can we look at the recommendations in? I'll come to the final point. A second, but happy to note 2.1. Happy to agree to 2.2. And note 2.3. And I suggest we add in 2.4, which is to agree to receive regular monitoring reports on the development of credit unions, including future projections. Yeah. Performance reports, yeah. Monitoring performance, yeah. Okay, happy with that? Okay, thank you very much. Can we turn now to item number 5, which is obviously our regular update on the Scottish Welfare Fund and discretionary housing benefit. Can I ask, Lorna, is there anything you want to add to the report before members?
Thanks, Chair. No, nothing further to add to the report, but obviously happy to take questions.
Okay, can I open up to members' questions? Obviously, there's a regular monitoring, but there's also a request to agree the additional funding, obviously based around the new policy that members have previously agreed, but I think this is just to make sure that we obviously agree the specific allocation of funding to top up the DHP spend. Any questions from members, Ian?
It's really small, I know, about 3.5, where it says, it is a very recent decision that we made, but when the report was written, I think Dom was at the time when we made that decision. Have you even got a feel in regards to how that's kind of panning out with that decision back on 27th of August, I think it was?
It is too early to tell, but we've had no negative impact back. We'll just start, I think the biggest impact will be following the 30th of September when the claims that we'd already authorised up to that date start to drop off, and then the reapplications potentially coming forward. And obviously that's only been 5-6 days since that has elapsed. All customers have been advised that the rewards ended, and we're reviewing applications. So nothing immediate at this point in time in the way of feedback. We'll know over the next, say, 5-6 weeks. We'll gather a wealth of information to see what that impact is.
Do you have any other questions? Pretty straightforward, I think. I think very much in terms of, I think really on top of this in terms of the way in which we're dealing with applications, so it's encouraging. Can we turn therefore to the recommendations? Members happy to note 2.1, happy to note 2.2, and happy to agree 2.3. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, can we turn to the final report, which is an update on welfare reform changes and the impact in Dumfries and Galloway, item number 6. Can I ask, again, Lorna, is there anything you want to add to the report before members?
Thanks, Chair. Probably the only thing in the report, we've tried where possible to analyse information where we have it, specifically around housing benefit. The more trickier one to analyse with these changes has been tax credits. We've used the information based on the claims that we know, but obviously there'll be a number of people in receipt of tax credits that are out with our scope, and it's been difficult to identify how many of those there are and potentially what the financial impacts is. So the information I've got within the report really highlights where we can identify the potential impacts, but I'm happy to take any other questions on the report.
Can I open up to any questions from members? Ronnie?
When I read this, it's quite frightening, the impact some of this stuff will have on our region, not least the money taken out of the system this year and next year and previous years. And it's very difficult because you've got the DWP and revenue benefits, because each individual will have certain things. And most of these tax credit and stuff are people that work already. Now, I don't know if you get shared information. I know last time you said it was difficult because sometimes you don't get the information we require to have an overview, if you like. So it's a bit hard to predict what's going to happen, and I appreciate that's captured in the report. It's more or less how, when was it? When the letters drop through the letterboxes and everyone filters through, then we would see it. So I believe the letters are going, is it November, December time, I think, to the individuals of how the impacts of the changes are. We might see an upturn in requests or inquiries into the new year. I don't know if that's what you think.
The timing of when people get notified will depend on the change. So things like the benefit cap, that doesn't take effect until next April. So we're going to write early in the new year, because we find if you write too early to some customers, it's too far in advance actually for them to take action on it. So for the likes of that, it'll be earlier into the new year. Things like the backdating of awards, they're really going to, as these happen, people will be advised. We'll make partner organisations aware of the changes, so anybody who's supporting clients who potentially fall into that, they're made aware. Tax credits, again, it's HMRC when their notifications will go out, which again will be early in the new year. But specifically around the tax credits, because of the interaction between tax credits, housing benefit and wages, there's one benefit may go up that then impacts another one going down, and then has a knock-on impact on something else going up. So it'll have quite a complicated impact for some clients, and that impact may be staged. So, claimants will be notified the tax credits goes down. If they're on housing benefit, that will filter through to us from HMRC. Their housing benefit will then go up. So that may take over 3-4 weeks before claimant really knows the total impact of what that change has, and that'll be quite an incremental one. So I think most of these claimants will start to get notified early in the new year through after April in May when they start to impact, and then obviously during 16-17 as new claims roll out, because as tax credit goes down, if the person's not already in housing benefit, they may become entitled to housing benefits. So we may see applications rise and requests for support through, through DAGCAS and the financial inclusion team in-house. We may start to see more applications and more requests for support through there. So it's going to be incremental. So we can just judge on the number of applications we have coming through and for the number of requests for support through also DHP, Scottish Welfare Fund, anticipating seeing more requests through there as a result of some of these.
And thanks for that, and that's the way I had it in my head. But the thing that strikes me now, listening to it, is there'll be a peak or a spike in inquiries, people saying, who did I turn to, where did I go? So the support mechanism, we've got benefit support offices, DAGCAS, other areas. Are we working with them to say, well, we anticipate a spike in inquiries because of these changes, probably April time or prior to that? And we're working in partnership with them because if there's a flood of inquiries, are we capable of dealing with them all, or we'd have to share it with other organisations?
I think at this point in time, we can only anticipate what if there will be. We know there's always an increase in inquiries at April, and that will be exacerbated as these changes become evident. It will be through March, April, because the notifications usually go out just before the new year. We will be talking to DAGCAS about how we then share that or support each other in handling that. At this point, we can only anticipate. We'll have our maximum staff available during that period, and that's as much as we can do. We'll have as many resources as available to us to actually cope with that. But we'll need to make sure we do have good referral processes between ourselves and DAGCAS. Whatever we can't cope with, we will refer over. We'll need to talk to them about their capacity as well.
Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. It was just a wee bit more clarity around the third child situation. I mean, it seems like the intention is that it's only claimants after that date that'll be affected, so the third child allowance will be lost. And obviously that's part of the calculation in terms of, but that might then trigger an eligibility for other forms of support that the legacy families, if you like, won't be entitled to. So, I mean, how do you see that looking in terms of the inequality, if you like, between the two different eligibilities?
I mean, yes, you're right. That rule will only take effect from April, so anybody who has a third child after the 1st of April won't have that allowance. If you had a third child prior to that, you will get the allowance. So we will have a two-tier system, so there will be some families out there who may compare themselves to another family. One is getting more in assistance in the way of welfare benefits than the other. That's obviously going to generate some inquiries to ourselves and to HMRC, obviously, who administer tax credits. So we will find on the system that with different levels of benefit for people who are potentially in exactly the same circumstances.
To come back with that, but there is a sort of element where the ones after April may be eligible for DHP when they wouldn't have been before. Is that correct?
Under the existing policy, yes, because we'll do a means test, on what their income is and potentially what their expenditure is, and where there's a drop or a bigger shortfall, the potential will become eligible for DHP.
Ian?
Thanks, Chairman. Just in regards to that, just trying to sum it up, when I was reading this report, I found it interesting, but just so I know I'm on the right track, on it, what I took it is about £12 billion reduction across the whole of the UK. I will share that, just short of 4.5 million, and how that applies. And within the body of the report, it states that there's numerous anomalies that might apply. It looks like it got to be a reduction, and it might apply to actually get slightly more. So the only kind of question was, if that's correct, the way I was analysing it, it's quite difficult. The only, again, other than the April 17 bit, where the third child wouldn't have received that, you wouldn't have received a benefit for a third child. Depends on the level of income you've got anyways, I think. I suppose that's any benefit, isn't it? The thing, it goes back to Dumfries and Galloway being, for me, Dumfries and Galloway being the lowest wage economy. Sometimes it feels as if we're beating that drum, and I think it's the last drum we want to be beaten. We should be looking at focusing on our aspirations rather than where we actually, the low level that was set at. I just wonder, how does this this kind of information, how is it tying into the bigger picture in regards to dragging us out of where we are? Bringing, again, higher level business here, can attracting more money, whether it's not so much state money, but actually can business and enterprise, that time. I mean, is there a link at all or not? Because I mean, that's what it started making me think. Maybe it's the solution orientated side of myself. Because I'd like to see everybody offer benefits if possible. Never be the case, I don't think, because some people have medical conditions and that's it. It's as simple as there will be on that type of system, and that's what the system's primarily there for. So I just wonder, after reading it, if the summarisation is correct. It's a kind of loose question, Lorna, but I just wonder how it tied into the bigger picture. How does this drive us towards building the economy? Kind of our main priorities. Does this have an effect or not? Really, is it just about coping with a predicament that we're actually in at this moment in time, and potentially future-proofing? Kind of loose question. Just what came out. It's almost philosophical, but it's what came out of my mind. Maybe Colin could help.
I mean, yeah, we'll go through the regional economic strategy first and then the anti-poverty strategy. But I mean, I think, for me, we are not, as a council, going to be able to mitigate against all the changes that are taking place, and I don't think we should kid the public and suggest we are. These will have a massive impact on families across Dumfries and Galloway, in particular the cuts to tax credits, and you know that will be a huge challenge both for the individuals affected, but also for the impact on the economy in terms of reducing spend in the local economy, and that has a detrimental impact. The key thing is, what we can do is around the regional economic strategy, which members will know who are familiar with the strategy, will know that it has a very, very clear focus on not just building the economy as a means to an end. It has a focus on that being a means to tackle poverty. The best way to deal with poverty, the best way to deal with low pay is to bring the high quality jobs into the area, and that's a key centrepiece of the regional economic strategy, and that's aligned, of course, to the anti-poverty strategy with things like the rollout of the living wage, the fact that we are the second local authority in Scotland to be an accredited living wage employer. So these things are a cornerstone of what we want to do as a council around the economic strategy and the anti-poverty strategy. There's no doubt tackling the scandal of low pay in Dumfries and Galloway is a key priority for this council, but we cannot pretend that the changes the government are making are not going to have a detrimental impact on the area, and there will be a limit to what we can do.
No, well, I agree with that entirely. I think you're absolutely right. It's a good summarisation. I just wonder if there's more we could be doing in regards to the links, the writings on the wall. We see what's coming, or do we? Again, we know there's £4.5 million in as far as benefits being lost for our economy. It's how are we replacing that? Does the regional economic strategy address that? Do you think? That's the point I'm trying to get to, or our anti-poverty strategy, or whatever other type of strategy we've got in regards to building the economy? You go back to our main priorities. I just wonder if are we giving it enough importance? Are we using the information that we've got strongly enough, lobbying enough? It's even a lobbying strategy when it comes to that. When you see this is the type of things that are coming into my mind, and I just want to try to express that in the best way I can, and just make sure that we're thinking of as many things as we can, because we could just noted the 2 points that are there, but there's a lot of information here. The writing's on the wall. Again, it's just being as early as prepared in the best way we possibly can as a council in regards to addressing these problems that are coming. The more people live and work, the less of a problem it is.
If you look at the three aims of the regional economic strategy, the one around wages in particular is an ambitious target, and I think that will do an awful lot of good in terms of mitigating against it. And obviously, as the anti-poverty strategy gets rolled out, and we'll hear a wee bit more about that in the next couple of weeks around the living wage, as that gets rolled out, then I think that will have a major impact. For me, the concern is that there is a lot more to come, that we don't fully yet know what the individual impact will be around the cuts in tax credits, but there'll be an awful lot more cuts to come in future years from the government, and we'll be back having further updated reports with further challenges in the weeks and months ahead. Ronnie?
Just one of the bullet points or it mentions in passing the universal credit. And I know we're not fully rolled out yet, but universal credit, when you wrap all the benefits up into one thing, it's going to have an impact because some of it may get lost, the individual ones. Just to remind me, when are we supposed to go fully into universal credit in Dumfries and Galloway?
There's been no further development of how the rollout will be rolled out across local authorities. At the moment, we're still on the low level. It's single, unemployed, simple cases. What the government has said is they are planning to roll out their full digital strategy first, and they want that in place before they actually start to ramp up the actual rollout of universal credit. There was talk about from April 2016 it would start to roll out to a wider group of claimants, but they're still testing their digital strategy, and I think there's another pilot going live in Scotland with the full digital platform, but they want that robust and be able to cope with the number of claimants before it goes any further. So at this point in time, I'd really have not much more in the way of information about when it's going to start to ramp up going forward.
Sorry, Jane, do you want to?
Thanks. I was looking at the appendix, Appendix 1, and considering the end of housing benefit for 18 to 21-year-olds, and thinking about our own children, so to speak. What connection is there between you, Lorna, and the looked after, the leaving care team? Because, I mean, I can see that it's really very important to be clear about what's happening with our own children, that they get information flowing to them so that they are well prepared. Because you're suggesting here it's making it difficult to rehouse these young people. And also there's something, you said 16 to under 18, and I'm not absolutely clear what that's meant. Are you saying it's just 352 young people under 21s, basically 16 to 21? Do you see in that second chunk there?
There's 352 that are aged between 18 and 21, but we actually have 16 that are under 18 on housing benefits. Sorry, just to be worded. The draft proposals we're looking at the moment is talking about people leaving care being exempt from this restriction. However, we are talking to social work services and trying to put links in place so we can identify those that are protected. We have some that are leaving care that are already protected in housing benefit with some of the restrictions, so we're aware of some of them. So we do have that link with social work services. But as this starts to roll out, we'll increase that and have a lot more conversation with them about how we can make sure it's quite a seamless and protection. No one falls through the gaps in it, basically. So we are working on that.
And generally speaking, again, if you're 18, you're not normally known for looking very carefully at information that comes through, official information. How about generally speaking, the 18 to 21-year-olds? How are we getting that information out to them?
That's a bit more difficult. I mean, obviously we can use our normal information channels. We'll talk to our partner organisations, the RSLs, and make them aware of potentially changes that's coming. We can write to claimants, but as you say, often those are the ones that maybe put their head in the sand and don't actually take cognizance of the impact until they're in the situation, and then you're into a crisis management position. So we can do as much as we can about getting the information out there and talking to our partner organisations, and hopefully that filters through. But over and above that, it's how we identify potential people who will come into that category and make sure they're aware of it before they enter into rental agreements and get themselves into a situation where the potential they don't qualify for housing benefit.
Could I? I'm sorry. I'm thinking about the just again because the people we are responsible for directly as corporate parents, and I just wonder whether we should just make a note that we would anticipate the corporate parenting group to have a think about this. Not specifically, but I think they should be made aware of an issue that is going to impact upon youngsters for whom we are responsible corporately.
Got a note of that. Stephen, do you want to?
Thank you, Chair. Sort of very tenuously related to this report, I'm looking at 3.5 and there's 1,197 families identified. And I don't know what the best way is to deal with poverty. and I'm not sure anybody really does because we're still dealing with it. I know we're seeking through economic strategy to increase the number of higher paid jobs in the area. Whether that's bringing them or creating them, I don't know if that would affect any one of those 1,197 particular families. It might raise our average GDP, but you know, there's high paid jobs in the UK, in London, for example, doesn't affect or reduce the poverty here. There's high paid jobs in Edinburgh, doesn't reduce the poverty here. There's high paid jobs in Dumfries and Galloway, doesn't reduce the poverty for those 1,197 families. I appreciate there's different ways and it's a multi-ingredient sort of model, but however high the GDP is, or the average wage, you're still going to get, I suspect, 1,197 families in poverty. And I think there's a wee bit of a, I still don't think we really know how we're going to solve this fundamental problem, because it seems to be to do with creating ways out of that rather than bringing other things in that maybe embellish figures in other ways. But I think we're really in a difficult place of mitigation against this, and there's no quick solution. So I think we just have to keep pressing on and looking for ways to actually tackle the problem at its source rather than stick and plaster solutions. Anyway, as I say, it was a bit tenuous link to the report. I think the 1197 was my only real link there, but just a comment really, Chair.
That's a perfectly valid point, absolutely. Ian?
Just on that same point, I mean, I think at that point Stephen's brought up is real relevant, but it's been coming up for years, and it's about, I think it's been one of the fundamental drivers behind the changes, and it's how on earth do you encourage folk back into work when there's a culture there, or even a habit? It's we're all habitual. We get up in the morning certain times usually and do certain things in our own ways. I know people who've been in benefits for a long, long time, and they might even have aspiration to get back into work. Very difficult. It's breaking that habit, breaking that cycle, and that's one of the. To me, that's what Stephen's touching on there. It's that culture. I mean, I don't know what we're doing as an organisation, being the Dumfries and Galloway Council, to try and address that culture, other than going back to the high-level strategy documents you're talking about earlier. We try to attract more business. We try to encourage, get people through employment service and such like back into work. But there's some people, it's like Stephen's saying, have been on benefits for years and years and years and years. Other than the people who have obvious medical conditions and so on. How on earth do we get these folk back? How does this kind of stuff touch on that? And I know it's one of the first things when the Conservatives came out with this, they started talking about this is about putting into place a system that actually encourages people back into work, not encourages them to stay in unemployment. So I think it's an important point Stephen touches on.
One of the important points to make, though, is that these cuts affect people that are in work. Working tax credits is not for people that are on benefits, so to speak, but people that are actually in work, that have found employment. I think that's one of the vast majority of people that are affected by some of the welfare reform changes that are going through at the moment are people in employment.
Thanks. No, thanks, Chair, and I appreciate your addition there, because I don't want to particularly say or assume anything about the families that are affected, just that they are affected. And I think you've made the very valid point in that people could be finding work, but you've got in-work poverty situations, which is another predicament for the region as well. So I certainly don't want to go down the road of assuming what certain families' daily habits are, because it's not for me to say. I just know that people are in difficulty, and I don't know. It was more a point on increasing the average GDP by bringing high-paid jobs into the area doesn't necessarily affect those that are affected by poverty or in-work poverty. So I think it's more of a macroeconomic point I'm sort of touching on, rather than making any assumption about the personal habits of any of the families, and I wouldn't want to be recorded as doing that. So thanks for your intervention, Chair.
Not at all, and I think there's also there is the related impact that there is a substantial sum of money being removed from the local economy. Therefore, that is not being spent on local shops, it's not being spent on local businesses, it's not being spent on other people's wages effectively, and that's a knock-on effect. So these changes not only affect the families that are having their tax credits and other changes to their benefits, it's actually affecting other people because of the impact on the local economy. Do you have any other? Ronnie?
Well, since everybody's making political statements, I'll make one. Clearly, the tax credit thing was a good thing in its time, but it masks the low wages, and people are being now, the government subsidising employers who pay low wages. Now, the answer isn't to take all the tax credits away and hope that the employer says, here you are, I'll give you 10 grand a year extra money. That's not going to happen. Dumfries and Galloway historically has had low wages. There's one or two peaks. I mean, I was lucky enough, I worked in an industry that paid decent wages, but there's other engineering companies across Dumfries and Galloway and other places that probably are way above that threshold. But the vast majority of people work in low wages. And I just don't know the answer. I mean, you could go back and just say, well, the thing I was going to say, sorry, if it wasn't for the national minimum wage, you know, how low would the wages be in Dumfries and Galloway? You know, I used to get hairdressers getting £3 an hour and things like that. You know, how do you sustain life on £3 an hour? How do folks sustain life at this day and age in £6.85 an hour? Very difficult. And I know from personal experience through my sons and other things and family members how difficult it is. And you know, most people are 1 or 2 wage packets away from disaster. If they lost their job, they're out their house, they're out, and there's nothing to fall back on these days. It's getting taken away. And I don't know where this country's heading, the UK, I mean, because you hear all the positive rhetoric, but the actions aren't matching the rhetoric. There's going to be a big void that society's got to pick up. Now, whether it's the police, councils, other agencies, there's going to be a problem. Now, we can't solve it. I'm here from the Dumfries and Galloway Council. We can't solve it. We've done, I think, put some good policies in place to try and mitigate it. But we can't pick up every single piece of government action. We just can't. We can't afford it. We've got to find savings as well. So I agree with Stephen. It's the worst place to be at the moment. Looking, you know, from our point of view, looking out and anticipating what do we do. The best lobbying mechanism, I think, obviously, to vote the Tory government out at the next election. But I'll advocate that, obviously.
Vote for Jeremy Corbyn. He's our man, isn't he? Yeah? Let's print money.
I'm looking at the remit of the Welfare Reform Subcommittee before me, members, and well, I'm incredibly tempted to take that bait and debate this particular issue. And Ronnie's very valid point, I will refrain from doing so. Do we have any more questions on the paper before us at all? No. Okay, can we turn to the recommendations? Okay, members happy to note 2.1 and obviously note 2.2, including obviously the reference there to the impact on looked after children and a role of corporate parents. Ronnie?
Just on that recommendation, and we've touched on it, I see the next meeting's in December, but that would be too early for any sort of feedback on the full impact of this. So when do you anticipate a report to this committee that would give us a better overview?
Probably to give you some proper feedback. I think you're really into the next financial year. I think you're after April. You're looking at probably June at the earliest, is to give us time to actually absorb the impact and then do some analysis of what that is.
That's the final item on the paper. But just before we finish up, members will be aware this will be John's last meeting of the Welfare Reform Committee in his role as Head of Strategic Housing, Welfare Reform, Revenues and Benefits. So I think I speak on behalf of the whole committee and place it on record a huge thanks to yourself, John, for all the work you've done around this particular issue. If you think back to where the council was at the start of a lot of these welfare reform changes, we were in a pretty, position where we were just simply finding our way. And I think we've made a huge amount of progress around putting in place really good systems around the Scottish Welfare Fund, around discretionary housing benefit, about getting a really strong handle on the impact of welfare reform within Dumfries and Galloway. And I think that's in no small part to your own leadership, John, in that role, and obviously the work of Lorna and the team. So I think we should absolutely place on record our thanks for the place that we're in at the moment, notwithstanding all the challenges that we've obviously got in the future. I think that as a council, should be very proud of the work that we've done so far, and obviously we'll continue to build on that in the future. But thank you very much.
No, just a quick comment. I would echo them same sentiments, but I think it even goes further back. When you take strategic housing in as a whole, it goes back to, I think of the strategic housing investment plans, how we've increased the level of affordable housing, social housing across Dumfries and Galloway. Ken, John's been a major player when it comes to that. I mean, I would like to, Ken, a great thanks to John, and he'll be a big miss. That's the only unfortunate thing. Ken, you're still young enough, so that's very unfortunate. But no, just it will be a great miss away from it, Ken, welfare form, and certainly a lot further beyond.
Okay, members, thank you indeed for your attendance. I don't have any other business, so that's the meeting closed.